Hey friends, Miss Jana here with week 24, day 1 of the Bible Review for Kids. Do you remember a few episodes ago when we talked about how Solomon built the temple? God made a promise to him that as long as the Israelites followed God, all would be well. But if they turned away and started worshiping other gods instead, there would be some consequences. Well, it didn't take long for the Israelites to do just that. What do you think God's response was to them? Let's read together in 2 Kings chapter 17, verses 6 through 11 to find out. Finally, the king of Assyria captured Samaria. It was in the 9th year of Hoshea. The king of Assyria took the Israelites away from their own land. He sent them off to Assyria. He made some of them live in Halah. He made others live in Gozan on the Harbor River, and he made others live in the towns of the Medes. All of this took place because the Israelites had sinned against the Lord their God, and he had brought them up out of Egypt. He had brought them out from under the power of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, but they worshipped other gods. The Lord had driven out other nations to make room for Israel, but they followed the evil practices of those nations. They also followed the practices that the kings of Israel had started. The Israelites did things in secret against the Lord their God. What they did wasn't right. They built high places for worship in all their towns. They built them at lookout towers. They also built them at cities that had high walls around them. They set up sacred stones, and they set up poles used to worship the female god named Asherah. They did that on every high hill and under every green tree. The Lord had driven out nations to make room for Israel, but the Israelites burned incense at every high place, just as those nations had done. The Israelites did evil things that made the Lord very angry. Friends, we see here that the king of Assyria had captured the Israelites and taken them away. This was all because the Israelites had sinned against God. You see, God takes sin seriously. He did not like that they were worshiping other gods. God had driven out all the other nations so that the Israelites could go into the promised land, but they worshiped the gods of these people and did evil things. They set up sacred stones, and they burned incense in the places that were meant to honor and worship God instead. This made God very angry. They had been warned by judges and prophets and leaders, and yet time and time again they disobeyed God. So God allowed for their enemies to capture them. God had warned the Israelites to get rid of all of the nations that were inhabiting the promised land because he knew that they would be tempted to worship the gods that they did, to be distracted by the things that they had worshiped. They got rid of most of them, but not all of them. You see, because the Israelites did not completely obey, the people from the other nations did just as God knew that they would do, and they pulled them back into the sin of worshiping other gods by teaching them to turn away from the one true God. Friends, we do the same thing with our God at times. We may not worship these gods that they did in the Bible like Asherah, but we do the same thing with other things that we worship. We don't completely destroy what God has told us to. We might stop most of the things that we should be doing, but not completely. Or maybe we don't do them as often, but they're still there. Or we put them aside where they're kind of mostly out of sight, but every now and then we go back to them again. Things that we should have gotten rid of altogether. Friends, if we do not destroy the things that are distracting us from worshiping God, they will come to destroy us, just as the things destroyed the Israelites and took them into captivity. We need to take sin as seriously as God does. When you respond today, ask God if there are things in your life that you need to get rid of, things that are distracting you from truly worshiping him. And if so, ask God to give you the courage to destroy them completely so they are out of temptation for you to fall back into that same sin. Thankfully, we have Jesus who forgives us, who helps us with this temptation. There's nothing too strong that God cannot help us overcome, and that is good news for us. Keep growing stronger and wiser, pleasing God and making friends. See you next time.